No Slapping Up is a podcast hosted by Youth Against Gender-Based Violence, a program sponsored by ORG Education. This podcast is a platform where we'll highlight, discuss, and enlighten youth and the wider public on issues related to gender-based violence. Another father lost his life the other day. Black man, wake up and find your way. Tell me, why we killing one another? Don't you recognize that it's your brother? Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of No Slapping Up. I'm Rashade and I'll be hosting today's episode. This episode's topic is how we contribute to gender-based violence socially and culturally. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts, Philip, Alexandria, Sabrina, and Sarah. Okay, so let's begin with an excerpt from Asian Pacific Institute on Gender-Based Violence. Cultural identities contain the histories of a people that include traditions, struggles, achievements, and triumphs. Cultures nourish pride, resilience, belonging, intersectional identities, and a connection to community. The culture is used to justify gender-based violence and inequality by invoking traditional beliefs and practices about how women and girls should be treated. If culture defines the spaces within which power is expressed and gender roles are enshrined, then our movement is here to push back. After all, some traditions and explanations do have an expiration date, and cultural DNA, just like individual DNA, changes with every generation.
Video in the report, it says it was a 19-year-old woman as well, just coming off of 18, 19, barely an adult. That it shouldn't be so late. He is obviously bigger than her, and it doesn't matter if he's off duty or whatever, it should never be like that. And there was also reports of this happening elsewhere, because now with the video, I feel like the video is a kind of a catalyst for people to now come forward and say, oh, this has happened to me as well. And it shouldn't be so, because people are now speaking about it. And it happened, and they sent it in or reported it supposedly, but it supposedly didn't get up to the courts, and the girl was there waiting to find out that it wasn't reported. So they are
talking about the post on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Not talking about the video anymore. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That post. That's another thing. People, social media again. People being able to come out and say, "Hey, this happened to me," and I'm just letting people know because nothing's being done about it, or this was wrong, and other people coming out and saying, "Hey, something similar happened to me," or something like this happened to me, and things not changing. No one, I want to say people aren't getting reprimanded, but we don't see it. So what can we say? And I am not invalidating any of those women's experiences, but I just wanted to bring up the point. The last Junkanoo we had, I think 2019, there's a clip of officers. They had a bunch of teenage boys. I don't know how old they were, but they had them like on the wall. They had their hands on the wall and they had their batons and they were spanking them, basically giving them punishment. I don't know what they were doing, but there was a clip of the officers doing that to 5 or 4 boys or whatever. And people were talking about it. It went a little bit viral. People were talking about, people like, oh, officers shouldn't be doing that. There are other ways to deal with that. And other people were saying, oh, it's not like they roughing them up. It's not like they throwing them up against the wall and punching them in their head. But people responding to that video, the people's responses to that video compared to people's responses to that girl being chokehold on a car, do you think there's some disparity between them?
Well, again, I think those are two similar situations. I think in both of those situations, we see police officers wielding their power in an unfair way against someone they perceive as being weaker or in a lesser position than them. So baseline, obviously, we know generally, women are in our society are considered, in many cases, to be weaker. So of course, that would elicit a bit more sympathy from the public than, say, the boys, who many people may consider to already be problematic, even though we don't know why the officers were doing that, because we know how Junkanoo goes. So we don't even have to get too far into that discussion. But I think the main issue here is that again, this goes back to my very first point about the first question, the ideas about gender norms. We expect boys to be involved in rougher and more violent situations. So it's expected they can take a bit more than a woman would be able to take. So even in cases where excessive force is used, it's like, oh, well, use a boy. Okay, you just take your hits and you keep on moving. And so they'll never get the same level of empathy and sympathy that a woman would get. And that is one of like the drawbacks of like patriarchy and all of that stuff, certain masculine ideas and stuff like that, because your pain is not considered the same as someone else's pain who's considered to be weaker.
I actually brought that up, Rashade, because like to show really similar situations but the different genders, it really juxtaposes the two to say, okay, it happens for females, it happens for males, and the basis is that it happens and it shouldn't be so. It should be addressed in a manner that, to say, we have to hold them accountable to say they can't do it. They have to do their jobs, which is law enforcement, but it should be done in a more professional manner and just better,
Right.
Well, how Philip was talking about the sympathy part, in a way, I feel as though the sympathy isn't really how it used to be. Like how back in the day, you usually see videos of like men beating on women and people would jump in to try stop the fight or whatever. Nowadays, people rather just stand on the side and videotape it, watch her get beat. So the sympathy isn't really there anymore.
I don't actually agree with that. I understand what you mean, though. A few months ago, there was a video of two people fighting on a bus, a man and a woman, and people just stood by and let it happen for a while because a lot of people knew them, and they was like, oh, you do this and this and that, and they let the story play out until they like pulled them apart, I guess, or somebody pulled the thing up. I think it has to do with our society, like how we're small and a lot of people know a lot of things are going on, everybody business, I think it does happen where people are pulled apart and situations are diffused. I feel as though the sympathy is still there, but the videos and stuff that we see is not everybody is in every situation. From the stuff that we see just through our phones or through the media, we don't really know,
Right. What Sabrina said, I in between about it, because even though I feel like some things should not be recorded, I also think it is great that it's being recorded so we actually so people can be more aware. Because you tell someone something but they don't believe it, but you see a video, you would 100%, 200% believe that it happened. So
right.
I think the sympathy is going down a bit, but then recording is also a way to get people to be more
but
sympathetic.
if it's 10 people watching a fight and 10 people recording,
Yeah.
is it really necessary for all the phones to be out? One video circulates to 1,000 phones in a minute. So 10 people recording one thing isn't really necessary. Someone else could put their phone away and try to assist to break it up instead of recording.
And also, I believe in some situations, people don't want to help break it up because what if weapons are involved? Sometimes the person who helped will be the person who got killed. So it's in between. It's a tricky situation. In some cases.
Right. I understand. I'm gonna stop the recording in 3, 2, 1. What do we all think about like harassment cases? Women and even men who are like being stalked and stuff. People reporting that persons are bothering them consistently in workspaces, within law enforcement and stuff like that. How do we feel about stuff like that? Do you think it's taken as seriously as it should be in the Bahamas? Because people have that, oh, like this my work husband, this my work wife, and I want this and this person buy me lunch and we could go out and do this on our lunch break, on our snack break. I want to work with this person for the day. And it could also be this person bothering me consistently, this person is consistently coming on to me in a workplace environment and I don't feel safe, and Bahamians not being able to distinguish the two. How do we feel about that?
Well, definitely. I definitely know about the whole work husband, work wife thing. And that is something that's supposed to be playful and mutual in nature. So both people are supposed to want what's happening in that case. The difference is the textbook definition of harassment is that any behavior or action that creates a hostile environment. So if one person is doing something to another person and that person does not like it and it makes them uncomfortable, then that's harassment. So the minute that person expresses that or even shows that they're uncomfortable, you're supposed to drop whatever you're doing. Simple. No further discussion needed. But I think we like to do this thing, like you said, because we have this whole idea that, oh, if we're persistent, this person will come around, or they're just playing hard to get or something like that. No, leave them alone.
Exactly.
That's it. Like, there's no need for further discussion on that.
All right.
At least that's my opinion.
I agree with you. I think in a workplace, it should be a respectable environment. And if something arises in the office or wherever you are, and it is mutual, then you should pursue that if it's allowed or outside of your workplace. But once the person expresses that they are not interested or it's unwanted, then it should immediately stop. And I don't think it's taken as seriously as it should be because people think it's playful and it just doesn't seem as serious because no one is hurt or no one is hurt as yet, but it can escalate. It can escalate to stalking, to being bothersome, just unwanted attention and unwanted touch or unwanted anything is not good.
Right.
No time to get caught up in your feelings, man. I'm sick of time to seeing all the bloodshed. Another father lost his life the other day. Black man, wake up and find your way. Tell me, why we killing one another? Don't you recognize that it's your brother? The system got so many stuck on stupid. Offend, and everybody wants to shoot. Think first before you pull the trigger, man. You know how many I was supposed to kill? But let it go like water running off a hill. There's a bigger plan for my life. I cannot do it locked up or in the grave. No longer to the system will I be a slave. Like a bear, it's time to come out the cave. Big brought leave you stuck and amazed. Only if you have the mind of a slave. Caught up in the glitz and the glamour. While young brothers on the street pulling stunts, TNT drama. We gotta take the blocks back. Yes, we gotta take the blocks back. Yes, we gotta take the blocks back. No more rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Because life